Welcome to part 4 of my Deltarune series. So far, I have covered chapters 1, 2, and 3, and today we'll be covering chapter 4. I'd recommend watching the first half of the series if you haven't already, but if you are caught up or just don't care, let's get started. At the end of chapter 3, the Roaring Knight appeared, striking Tenna down, defeating our party, and kidnapping Undyne and bringing her to the bunker. What was once a fun adventure through a strange world just became a lot more real. At the very end of chapter 3, you may remember that the bunker door opened, presumably so Chris could come inside. Unfortunately, chapter 4 does not pick up right where chapter 3 left off. Instead, it starts with Chris and Susie closing the dark fountain in Chris's living room. Susie recaps the ending of chapter 3, and then Chris wakes up in the light world, with Susie and Toriel already eating breakfast. Something you can immediately notice is the state of Chris's TV, which we now know is really Tenna. If you had recruited the Shadow Guys and Pippins, and also did not beat any other enemy with violence, Tenna will have been broken but be repaired. But if you beat any enemy with violence, then Tenna will be completely smashed. Susie will say that they tried looking for him after the night vanished, but nobody wanted to help find him. If Tenna is broken, you will be unable to bring him to Castletown, but otherwise he will be like a normal recruit. You can then sit down with Susie and Toriel for breakfast. Toriel will say she had some strange dreams the night before, implying she doesn't really remember anything that happened in the Dark World. She will then ask Susie if she wants to attend church with them. Susie reluctantly agrees, but then realizes the church is near the shelter. Susie wants to use the church service to ask people if they can get into the shelter. Toriel then gives some of Asriel's old clothes to Susie to use as church clothes. Interestingly, she has also changed her outfit, which is really just her outfit from Undertale. Pre-chapters 3 and 4, there was a theory that, because a person's outfit changed upon entering a Dark World, Undertale characters would wear their outfit from Undertale in a Dark World. This ended up not being true, but Toriel's Undertale outfit still holds a little bit of significance in Deltarune. Toriel's robe has the Deltarune symbol on it, which was one of the 3 symbols on the bunker, and has some level of importance to the story. Before you go to church, you can walk around Chris's house with Susie. If you go into Chris's room, she will wonder why Asriel's side has all the awards, and will take one and put it on Chris's side. This isn't really that important, but it is nice that somebody recognized Chris's room is so sad. You may also notice that the Deltarune symbol is on the rug. I'm not going to point out every instance of the Deltarune symbol from here on out, but it is literally everywhere if you are looking for it. If you inspect the bloodstain, Susie will help you clean it up, which is something she is familiar with for some reason. If you inspect the birdcage, Susie will say she didn't know Chris owned a bird or something. Inspecting it again reveals Chris nodded when Susie said or something. If you inspect the refrigerator, Susie will mistake a picture of Asriel for Rousey, to which Chris starts pointing out all of the differences between the two. You may have noticed this yourself throughout the chapter, but it seems like Chris is showing more emotion, or at least acting on their own. In chapter 1, they were almost indistinguishable from the player. In chapter 2, cracks were starting to appear, like if you try to play the piano, or Chris clearly being disturbed by Spamton. Then in chapter 3, if you do the S-rank games, Chris will straight up refuse to comply with your commands sometimes. And the last shot reveals that Chris is hiding a lot from the player. At this point, we know Chris is their own person, and Chris knows that we know that. Since there's no reason to keep up the illusion, in chapter 4, there will be dozens of instances of Chris acting on their own. Chris does not get their own text box, but we can make out what they say based on other characters' reactions. Things like them explaining the differences between Asriel and Rousey, or nodding at Susie's comment might seem like pretty minor details, but the fact that it's unprompted is what's interesting about it. Finally, if you inspect the mirror in the upstairs hallway, you receive this message. It's hard to put into words, but for some reason, seeing Susie next to you, you felt like whatever you were for just right now, it might be okay. This description is very sentimental and kind of comes out of nowhere, but throughout chapter 4, we learn that one of Chris's defining personality traits is their love of Susie. They are very attached to her, and while it's kind of up to your interpretation, I do feel like it's implied Chris has feelings for her. This is complicated for a few reasons. One, because Noelle likes Susie and Susie probably likes her back. But also, Chris wasn't really the one who befriended Susie. We did. Basically everything Chris has said to Susie has just been us talking to Susie through Chris. In fact, if Chris is working with the Knight, they are in direct opposition to Susie and will eventually need to betray her. And it is demonstrated repeatedly that Susie does not like when people lie to her, so I can't imagine Chris's betrayal will go over well with her. This tension will not be resolved in chapter 4, but you can clearly see it build throughout the chapter. Chris clearly values her relationship with Susie, but knows it is built on a foundation of lies that eventually will fall apart. Once you head to the church, you can look around the lobby, but there's not a whole lot to see. You can find some Lord of the Hammer books on a shelf, which, if you forgot, was the book series written by the priest's father, Gerson. Once you enter the hall, a long cutscene will begin. You can choose to skip it by sleeping, but if you don't, there's a lot of different dialogue paths you can go down. The start of the cutscene will be a hymn sung by Toriel and the choir, and I think this hymn is one of the most overlooked parts of the game. Here, it is revealed that the prophecy Rousey described at the start of chapter 1 is not some mysterious Dark World only thing, but literally the scripture that the town's religion is based on. The hymn alludes to heroes, the Dark World, and the angel. Even the main melody is just a don't forget leitmotif. This doesn't mean every Lightner secretly knows about Dark Worlds, but just that if they did know, they'd likely recognize them from their town's religion. I think Deltarune fans realize that this scene implies most people in the town are aware of the prophecy, but they don't realize just how crazy that is. If it was Noelle and Jackenstein, or Toriel and Alvin, or Caddy and Caddy, who fell into the first Dark World and spoke to Rousey, they would probably recognize his story from their religion. It makes sense that Susie doesn't know the prophecy. This is apparently her first time at church. But it's something that Chris should definitely know about, and yet they play dumb not just to us, but to Susie and Rousey. This recontextualizes the whole game to be about Chris preventing us and their friends from finding out secrets that the rest of their town knows about. It makes you wonder what other things are completely obvious to Chris and the town, but not to us and Susie, who just recently showed up. Like, could we just ask Jackenstein what happened to Des and he'd tell us? Maybe, but because Chris is in control, we can't do that. After the hymn, Alvin will call up Caddy to perform the reading of the holy words. And while it's hard to pay attention to her, you can draw even more comparisons between the town's religion and the events of the game in her speech. During her reading, you can choose to try to pay attention to it, during which Susie will talk over it anyway. Or you can look in your pocket for things to mess around with. This scene will make it clear that all of your Dark World items have a Light World counterpart. Like if you had a Dark Burger in your inventory, Chris will pull out a burnt crumb. If you have a Revivement in your inventory, which is kinda likely if you beat the night without using all of your healing items, Susie has a chance to eat it here as it's now a peppermint, so be careful. On the other hand, if you had equipped the wood blade in the Dark World, you can trigger special dialogue that ends with Susie giving you a 400 HP healing item, which is pretty cool. When Caddy's speech is done, Alvin will begin preaching, and start by quoting his late father Gerson. While Chris will fall asleep here, we do catch the first few lines of Gerson's quote.
We shall never know the pieces of the prophecy, lost to time. But was everything important truly written down in those words? Myself, I see a blank page as an invitation to write, to take the future, and...
These may seem like throwaway lines now, but this quote actually serves as the main thesis of chapter 4. But it's too early to see why, and we have some investigating to do. After Chris and Susie drink juice, we are allowed to interrogate the churchgoers about the shelter. Not all of them are very helpful, but there are some interesting details to note. For example, you can talk to this old turtle woman, who scolds Chris and tells them they should be more like Bruhlie. While it's not explicitly stated, it's likely this woman is Miss Boom, the person Bruhlie referenced in chapter 2. It's a bit sad that Miss Boom doesn't remember Bruhlie's name, but it does make sense given his backstory. You can talk to Alvin and thank him for giving a banging sermon, but more importantly, he tells us that Asgore goes to the church at night to pray for our family. Asgore is noticeably absent from the service, however. Alphys is one of the only people who speaks openly about the shelter, but she warns Chris to not go in there. She tells us that, although it's supposed to be used for emergencies, the way people talk about it makes her feel like whatever's inside might be worse. She then mentions that she's only ever seen Undyne and the mayor over there. If we ask her about Undyne, Alphys also says that Undyne invited her to church, but notices she didn't show up. You can try telling her it's your fault she's not here, but Alphys misinterprets this as being about the chocolates. Or, Chris might have twisted our command to make it about the chocolates. After all, if Chris is working with the night, They likely don't want anyone else finding out Undyne is missing. You can also talk to Toriel, Rudy, and Noelle, who are all by each other. Noelle will tell you that her mom keeps everything important at her house, not at City Hall. This confirms our theory from Chapter 2 that Noelle's mom was the mayor. If we talk to Rudy, we can also learn her mom's name. Toriel thanks Rudy for his wife's generosity in supporting Asgore financially, to which Rudy corrects her and says his wife's name is Carol. Toriel then says that she wishes Carol wouldn't support Asgore's you-know-what, and when Rudy presses Toriel, she spills her drink on him. This is a very strange interaction, but there's some dialogue later in the chapter that will make what's being discussed here pretty apparent. And last but not least, we can talk to the most important character in the game, the key to everything, Jackenstein.
Chris, followed you. Haha, bet you thought I was catty. Today's game was wild. I think we won. What? Codes? Sorry, don't know that. Never will. Been real. For her, I go to the big church match as her substitute player. For me, she covered in hair always. We do what the other can't.
Okay, maybe that Jackenstein quote wasn't the most important to the story, but unironically, why is he so much less coherent now? He was basically coherent in Chapter 1, but each chapter, it feels like he's losing his ability to talk. I can't tell if this is just Toby Fox deciding to make his dialogue more real, or if it's actually significant in some way, but either way, it's interesting. Once we talk to enough people, specifically Noelle, Alphys, and Jackenstein, you can report back to Susie, who decides we need to go investigate Noelle's house for clues to get into the shelter, and she comes up with a foolproof plan to get into the house.
Hey, nice singing.
Susie, how did you, why are you, what brings you to, church, Susie?
You know, juice.
Oh, right, sure, that's why I come too?
Right?
Yeah,
It looks like blood.
definitely. That's why I'm always drinking it.
Yeah, too bad they just ran out of blood.
Where, are you going with this?
Let me get straight to the point.
Yes?
Look, Noelle. You wanna work on our, projects together? You know, at your place?
Huh? I mean, I'd have to ask, and my mom, I'm not sure if she'd... Yes. I mean, yes. Yes, we can do it. Yes.
Really? Damn, that was easy. Boom. Cool. We'll see you later.
Oh, Chris is coming too? I mean, of course. Right. It's for the school project. So, should I invite Bruhlie then?
Oh, hell no.
Okay.
From here, you will leave the church with Toriel and Susie, and be thrown into another cutscene. Toriel will ask us to go to the diner and mention choir practice, but Asgore runs out from the bushes to interrupt. He dramatically gives Toriel a bouquet of flowers, who shrugs him off and walks away. Asgore says that he hopes that the family will be together when Asriel comes home, give the flowers to Chris and Susie, and now you are free to explore hometown. Going to Noelle's house will move the plot along, but there are a lot of other things you can interact with. The shelter, graveyard, and church do not have much going on. The only thing of note is one of the politicians says the mayor killed his briefcase with a huge katana. This might connect to the dog burglars in Chapter 2, who mention a mysterious figure attacking them. The library is more interesting, because if you defeated Bruhlie through violence in Chapter 2, it won't be open. Instead, you will find Bruhlie in the hospital, whose arm is still frozen stuck. It's a creepy reminder that the Dark World is, to some extent, real, and can affect the Light World. However, it is an easy detail to miss if you are playing Deltarune as a pacifist, which is how I imagine most people are playing it. Also, the library being fully closed if Bruhlie is injured implies the library can only function if Bruhlie is there, which is pretty funny. If Bruhlie is still healthy, he'll insult Chris and Susie when we talk to him, but when Susie says we will leave, he will get a bit sad. You can also go back upstairs and see that Beffrey has moved back a space and we can read another book. It tells us that when a monster dies, their ash is spread over an object they loved, and will be buried with them. This isn't new information as Alvin tells us this in Chapter 2, But what is interesting is what Beffrey has to say. I love reading, especially, wait, the books upstairs, the books upstairs, the books are, wait, love. Beffrey, like Jockington, is becoming more incoherent each chapter. But unlike Jockington, Beffrey's lines feel a lot more ominous. It's almost like he only has one actual line, but each chapter the words are scrambled up, so it seems like he has new dialogue. But what's most intriguing about Beffrey is that he appears again in chapter 4. If you go to the lake and try to talk to Onion, he won't appear. If you never talk to Onion, you get a cutscene where Susie tries to skip a rock, but otherwise she'll tell you to leave. This is already pretty weird, as the last thing Onion said was that he was going to investigate a song he heard from under the lake and report back to us today. So, something must have happened to him. But if you leave and come back, Beffrey will now be at the spot where you wait for Onion. He says, don't wait, especially don't wait. So, maybe this is just Toby Fox telling us not to wait for Onion. But like, why use Beffrey? Why is he here? Why does he switch up the order of wait, don't when we talk to him again? And where is Onion? Well, there are a lot of elephants in the room I have been ignoring throughout this walkthrough. The reason I'm ignoring them is because I think it will make more sense if I wait until the end to explain them. And also, I want to try to boost engagement from Deltarune fans who are confused why I don't mention something. But I believe Beffrey relates to the biggest elephant in the room I have not addressed so far. And one of the pieces of evidence for this is his wait, don't line. If you take the first letters of wait, don't, you get WD. Those letters might not mean anything to you if you haven't played Undertale. But if you have played Undertale, but have yet to play Deltarune, I might have just activated a sleeper cell agent. But I will leave it at that for now. Outside the library, Caddy and Jockington will be hanging out with Caddy's parents. I'll be honest, maybe Jockington isn't that important to the story, so I won't have my voice actor voice act his lines here. But when Caddy sees we are hanging out with Susie, she scolds us as Susie is apparently a cursed beast. She warns us again to keep her away from Noelle, and when Susie tells her that it's too late, Caddy magically curses us. Thankfully, we can receive Jackenstein's sports blessing to neutralize the hex. It's not clear if Caddy's dialogue is just a joke, and she is only concerned about Noelle, because it's implied she and her are friends, or if Caddy is foreshadowing some bad thing that will happen later in the game. In case it's the latter, that's why I'm including it in here. The police station is closed, but the police officer Napstabluke will be outside. He will comment on Undyne's absence, and tell us that she had some secret code to get into the bunker. But he also says that Undyne never wrote the code down, or told it to him. So as far as we know, there's no getting it. At the hospital, you can get the same cutscene where Chris refuses to play the piano, but this time, Susie will mention that Toriel said Chris was good at playing the piano. You can also visit Rudy again. Despite him attending church, it seems like he is still pretty sick. He tells Susie that Noelle is not going to the festival with anyone, to which Susie is pretty surprised. The only thing of note the next street up is the diner. While Toriel won't be there, you can still sit down and have a meal for $5. This is hometown money and not dark dollars. But you can just go to Asriel's room and borrow $5 from him to pay for this meal. Doing so will trigger a long cutscene I'll play for you now.
The diner, huh? Haven't eaten here since your mom took me. I remember plowing into my food with a runny nose. I probably just became every janitor's enemy after that, but it's funny. Even though I was only making a mess, her face looked so happy. Just sitting there, smiling, watching me. Kind of like you're doing now. Jeez. Chris, anyone tell you your family is goddamn weird?
Here you go, and here's a little something extra for your friend.
Huh?
If you need anything else, just holler.
Alright, Chris. Don't hold anything back. Phew. Want the last bite of my sundae? Too slow. So, guess we should get going, huh? What are you doing? Breathing on the window?
Draw something.
Is that me? Not bad, you know? Here, let me draw something. It's you. What do you think?
Accurate.
What can I say? I'm an artist. Even got your ear in there. One of them. Whatever. Look, I made you talk. Susie rules.
Make Susie drawing talk.
What are you? I wouldn't say that. And then rain fell down and washed everything away. Huh.
Write something in the corner.
Huh? Are you writing something? Chris, I can never tell when you're messing around.
This is one of my favorite scenes in the game for a few reasons. The most obvious takeaway is the vaguely romantic undertones of the scene, but I think it is a lot more than that. If you remember in Chapter 1, QC told us how Chris and Asriel used to come into the diner, breathe onto the windows, and draw shapes in it. This scene of Susie is a complete recreation of Chris's childhood, down to them sitting in the same corner of the diner. And Chris is the one who initiates this. We don't tell Chris to breathe on the window, they do so on their own, and then we are given the option to draw a picture. This is something that Chris wanted to do, and means enough to them that they acted on their own while the soul was in them. Regardless of whether or not you think Chris has feelings for Susie, it is obvious that Susie is important to Chris, and in a way, she has replaced Asriel in Chris's life. Even the money we used to pay for the meal is money we stole from Asriel. But there's one other thing that makes it so memorable, and that's the last dialogue option. You can choose to make Chris write something in the window, and this message is completely hidden from the player. But Susie can see it, and while she shrugs it off, it makes you wonder what Chris wrote. The command we gave Chris was so vague that they could have written literally anything in the window. Does Chris know we can't see them here, and try to tell Susie something behind our back? Was it a warning about the night or the shelter, an attempt at admitting guilt, a confession of love, or just a simple joke? This unease that arises at the end of the scene is all over Chapter 4. On the surface, everything is normal, and yet you know something is not right. Chris nodding when Susie talks about the birdcage. Onion not showing up at the lake. Caddy's ominous warning about Noelle. Rudy's worsening health, and now Chris's secret message to Susie. Hometown appears as a small happy community, but you know that this can't go on forever. Sooner than later, you are going to expose the truth about Chris. Or, Chris is going to betray Susie and their friends first. Either way, there are dark times for the fun gang ahead. At least for now, they can still act like normal teenagers. There is still more to explore in Hometown, however. Continue into the street with a bunch of houses. Inspecting Caddy's house gives dialogue saying that the door is locked with 3 codes. But this information is useless. This is a reference to the shelter lock, but what I find interesting is that the words 3 codes are highlighted in red. To me, this implies that just because text is red, doesn't mean it actually means anything, and this will be important for theories later on. If you go to Metaton's house, you can offer to give your TV to Metaton. They will gladly accept it, but I will warn you, doing this will remove Tenna from your castle town, and you do get some special cutscenes with Tenna there. Asgore's shop is closed, but a NPC outside explains how he has to sell flowers after he lost everything. Why he lost everything is something that they assume we know. This lines up with Carol also supporting Asgore financially, and Asgore being kicked off of the police force. We can also look through the back window of his shop and spot a corkboard covered in papers and documents, which sounds like a conspiracy board. We unfortunately cannot go in, but it seems like Asgore is investigating something on his own time. Maybe he's investigating his marriage to find out why it failed, but later in the chapter, we will get more clues about Asgore to figure out what's going on with him. Before we hang out with Noelle, let's go visit Castletown and catch up with the Darkners. When we arrive, Susie will brief Rousey on what happened with Undyne and the Knight. Considering Chris and Susie went back to the Chapter 3 Dark World before Chapter 4 started, I'm not sure why they didn't tell Rousey this then, but whatever. We can also visit Sham and tell him about her fight with the Knight. He actually has a lot of different dialogue here. Or if you lost to the Knight without the mantle, you lost to it with the mantle, you beat it, or even if you beat it without the Shadow Mantle. But I'm using the version where you beat it with the Shadow Mantle, as I'm guessing that's what most players did.
Ah, I know what you're going to say. Now, no, there's no shame in it. You fought the knight, didn't you? Well, we all know there's no winning there. What? You got the shadow crystal? I see. So you were able to recover the shadow mantle. That's odd. Chris, where did you find it? Well, never mind that. You got the crystal. That's all that matters. Now you've got 3. Only 2 more and we should have enough to make something I think you'll quite enjoy. Now good luck, and I'll be taking that shadow crystal.
We only have to collect 2 more shadow crystals until Sham gives us a new item, likely the pure crystal that's been teased since chapter 2. If we're lucky, we could get it as early as the end of chapter 5. Near Sham's store, we can find a new TV building. This is where we can play old minigames, including the ones from chapter 3. But there's something else about this building which is intriguing. Inside is a room for Mike, the person that Tenna and Spamton talked about that was never actually shown on screen. It seems like he made it to Castletown. Now, here's the thing. Mike was one of, if not the, most theorized about character before chapters 3 and 4 released, all because of 2 lines of dialogue Spamton had. There were dozens of theories about him being the secret boss, being related to the mysterious friend, or being tied to other important characters. It turns out that Mike was not actually important, and Spamton was really foreshadowing the arrival of Tenna. You probably forgot all about Mike once chapter 3 got going, until you reach this point, and you get the reveal that Mike was real after all. However, I'm not going to show you what's inside this room. Don't worry, you're not missing anything important plot-wise, but that's not the only reason I'm not showing it to you. The fight against Mike is so self-referential and unique, it doesn't feel right summarizing it in video essay slop like this. It's something that you need to experience in full by yourself, either by playing through the game, or by watching a playthrough of it online. It would just not be the same if I explained it to you. All I will say is that the code to get into Mike's room is 6453, and I will leave it there. Inside the castle, we can head down to the dungeon and talk to King. If Tenna is still at Castletown, you can see a cutscene between him and Tenna, but that's not what's interesting. You can ask King about Jevil, to which he says that Jevil was the one who told King about the knight. If you ask them about the knight, he will reveal that he never actually met them. Like Queen, I guess he was just assuming things based on the knight's actions. Upstairs, you can find that there's now another floor, Lancer's room has been expanded, and Chris and Susie's room have been combined into one. Rousey uses this new room to throw a tea party, and there Susie and Rousey will talk about how they've grown closer throughout their adventures. Rousey will also admit they have never tried cake before, despite baking seemingly being one of their favorite things. And despite me making Rousey eat the spin cake to heal last chapter. On the new floor, you can find rooms for Queen and Tenna. Neither room is very interesting, but Tenna will ask you to find a new home for him, implying that you should give him over to Mettaton. At the end of the hallway is a taped off area, and behind it you can see a room meant for Rousey. Rousey says he needs to clean it before we go in, but Susie ignores him and runs in. Remember back in chapter 1, when I kept emphasizing that Susie doesn't really listen to Chris or anyone, and I said it would be important later? Well, this is another example of Susie refusing to listen, and we will finally get a payoff for this trait later in the chapter. Inside Rousey's room, we are treated to this cutscene.
It's empty?
My own room? I don't need a room. At least that's what I thought, so I never...
You live here. Why do we have rooms and not you?
Making you two happy is my purpose. If I think about it, there's no reason for me to have anything.
That's the stupidest goddamn thing I've ever heard. You see this stupid excuse for a room? I don't care what the reason is. Me and Chris are gonna fill it up, wall to wall, until you have the most badass room in the castle.
Susie.
Look, you can't be the only one with an empty room. It's too sad, you know? Wherever we go, we'll keep an eye out for furniture. Right, Chris? Come on.
Chris, Susie is so nice. It makes my heart hurt. I don't really have hobbies or interests. Baking, sewing, singing, those are all just things I thought to do for you two. But recently, I'm starting to feel like I'm developing my own opinions, my own likes, my own dislikes, my own desires, my own fears. Please, tell me, should a Darkner be feeling this?
Even if you try to say no, Chris will make you say yes anyway, by yawning when they say the not so it sounds like Chris answered of course. It's yet another example of Chris obeying the player, but that's not why this scene is important. Chapter 3 did a lot for Rousey's self-image, but here we can see he still does not value his life on the same level of Chris and Susie's. Everything they have done is to appease one of the two of us, and they did not have any interest of their own when we first met them. But over time, they are developing their own personality and starting to see themselves as a real person. Rousey still isn't 100% there yet. We can see him correct his pronouns from the first person to just a Darkner when he asks us what he should be feeling like, but he is making progress. Also, if you are wondering why this Rousey plush is here, this will only show up if you gave the present to Rousey in Chapter 2, instead of Susie, Noelle, or Bruhlie. It's a small detail, but it illustrates that even the tiniest of decisions could affect something chapters away, and that some choices do matter. The last thing I have to say about Castletown is about the weird Rudin. You might remember this NPC that somehow knew Castletown is named after the player. Well, for whatever reason, he has lost some of his color in Chapter 4. He even comments on this if you talk to him again. If you are a first-time player and completely separated from any theory communities, this probably does not make any sense to you. But most believe this is related to the mysterious WD that Beffrey tried warning us about. For now though, you'll have to wait until theory time for me to explain what I think is happening here. Once you are all done exploring Hometown and Castletown, you can go to Noelle's house. When you first arrive at the gate, you will have to wait for Noelle to come out. During the wait, Susie gets hungry and asks if Chris has any snacks, to which Chris hands her a rose from Asgore's bouquet. When Noelle comes out to greet them, she thinks Susie brought her the flower, but Susie doesn't get the hint and eats the rose in front of her. She invites you inside, although you can actually not go in and keep exploring the town. If you go to either Castletown or the diner after talking to Noelle, she will have special dialogue in the next scene, where she references Chris and Susie abandoning her. Once you actually enter Noelle's estate, you and Susie learn that she has a huge house. I guess it makes sense that she's rich if her mom's the mayor. Inside the house, you are free to explore some of the rooms before you start the study session. The main living room is not that interesting, besides a suspicious collection of red heart-shaped objects that Noelle says her mom owns. There are also some toy snowflakes hanging up that Noelle made for her parents, and she says that her mom had them bronzed. We don't know much about Noelle's mom, but it seems like one of her defining personality traits is her protectiveness. We know she keeps everything she thinks is important in her house, but even there, she goes to extreme measures to preserve things as mundane as her kid's art project. Inside the kitchen, there's a long black katana that was referenced earlier, along with a grand piano that Noelle says she never uses. There's also a crawl space with a bunch of boxes and a vent, which is suspicious, but we can't really do anything with them. You also receive access to Noelle's room. You can take a special pencil from her, which will turn into a good Dark World sword. It's a better version of the bounce blade, and if you are doing a pacifist run, you likely will not need to equip the black shard much, so it's worth picking up. In Noelle's closet, Susie notices a pair of angel wings, and Noelle says she was the angel in a school play, and liked the wings so much she kept wearing them. There is a lot of angel imagery associated with Noelle, and if you remember back in Chapter 2, she kinda looked like an angel. It's an interesting connection to make as this chapter goes on. We are unable to access Noelle's parents' room, the bathroom, or a room with a black door. If we interact with the black door twice, Noelle says it's her sister's room. Finally, if you neglected to give the shadow crystal to Sham, you can use the glass item here. When Noelle is in your party, it gives you the custom message, you looked through the glass. For some strange reason, for just a brief moment, you thought you saw Noelle close against you, whispering. This, while creepy, doesn't make much sense. But I will return to this dialogue after the weird route. Eventually, you will reach a dead end exploring and be forced to start the study session. Within a few seconds, Noelle will stop it to take a phone call.
Hi, Bruhlie. What's up? Huh? Sure, of course I'm alone. Sure. I bet I do look quite serene this fine evening. If it's about the notes, I've already highlighted them for you. So, what? You want me to go on a date to the festival with you? I mean, sure. I'd be glad to be your player too.
She's not going to the festival with you, dumbass!
Susie?
Look, you don't really want to go with him, right? Some people aren't going to get it till you scream no. Did you forget that or something?
Yeah, you're right. I shouldn't be afraid to tell Bruhlie how I really feel. Next time I should be honest. Next time I should shake his neck and scream at him.
So,
Where did you throw my phone anyway?
Chris, I'll keep her busy. You go look for clues.
From here, you can explore Noelle's house by yourself. But before you go, you can pick up the phone to find Bruhlie monologuing to no one. You can offer to go to the festival with him if you are doing the woo Bruhlie route, but otherwise it's just a comedic scene. By yourself, you still can go into the master bedroom or the bathroom, but you can enter Des's room. The first thing you probably notice is the red guitar. You may remember this from all the way back in chapter 3, which I introduced by explaining the Spamton sweepstakes. This red guitar was on the hidden page labeled Des, and here we have a payoff for it. But before we interact with the guitar, we can notice some other things about this room. There are a lot of band posters, albums, and instruments scattered everywhere, which lines up with Tenna saying Des was a musician. You can also find a wiffle bat, which goes back to chapter 1, when Noelle said Des attacked Chris with a wiffle bat. There's also Asriel's retainer, implying that he and Des are pretty close friends. Generally speaking, the room still feels lived in, with the bed being unmade and objects scattered everywhere. I don't think this implies Des is still around. Instead, think about Carol's want to preserve everything important to her. I think Des's room being untouched, along with Noelle previously saying we weren't allowed in, implies that Carol wants to leave everything the way it was when Des disappeared. This is behavior that's somewhat common in families who recently lost a family member. I recently watched the miniseries Sharp Objects, and in that show, the main character's sister died when she was young, and their mother keeps her room the same as it was when she was still alive. I think that is most likely what is going on here. Eventually, you will interact with the guitar, revealing this dialogue. It's a red guitar. There's a code taped to the inside. It says shelter. Take it. You lean down to look inside the guitar. You began to read the numbers in the passcode. 1, 2, If you were still doubting the Soul and Chris being separate entities, or Chris working with the Knight, this basically confirms both things. For the first time in Deltarune, we can explore a location without being inside of Chris. Now that we know the shelter code is in Des's guitar, we should try to find our way back there. Of course, the code is probably just 1225, but still, it would be nice to confirm. Unfortunately, the vents are unable to get us into that room. However, we can spy on a few scenes going on throughout the house. The first you will encounter takes place in the kitchen. Chris is pouring a glass of RC Cola, and is on a phone call with someone. Chris doesn't say anything, and while it's hard to make out what the other person is saying, it's clearly something very important. Dark fountain. Next. Susie must not get guitar. need soul. Without soul, Chris will... Susie, guitar, code, stop. Police, sacrifice, next week. Church, tonight. Chris, Dark World, no soul, can't. The identity of the secret caller is one of the biggest mysteries in the game. However, I will wait until later to speculate on who this is, as you'll get more clues as the chapter goes on. But from this conversation, we can infer a few things. It seems like the next Dark World will be in the church, as the caller mentions creating a new one and something happening at the church. They also want to make sure Susie does not get the guitar, probably because the guitar contains the code to get into the bunker. They also mention something about the soul and Chris, and while it's not clear what they are talking about, in the Japanese translation of the game, the dialogue implies Chris needs the soul to enter the Dark Worlds. Finally, they mention a police sacrifice, and we have no idea what this means, but it probably relates to the knight capturing Undyne. The vent door is off in the kitchen, allowing you to leave the vent area. If you try to run at Chris during this phone call, they will hit you with the empty bottle and bring you back to the crawl space. This also happens once the phone call is done, and they seemingly pass out from an RC Cola sugar rush. If you attempt to enter the room again, the vent door will be back on. Chris, who, for the first time all game, finally has some time alone, walks off screen to play the piano. Chris has 8 songs that they will play, most of them being piano covers of songs you will hear throughout Deltarune. To me, this scene is one of the most interesting in Deltarune. We really have no idea what's going on with Chris and pianos, because Chris is purposely preventing us from learning anything about them. Some people think Chris can't play the piano when the soul is inside them, but I don't think this is the case. I think Chris could play the piano, but refuses to. We can only hear these songs if Chris thinks we aren't listening. Additionally, Chris does things on their own all the time now, so they could likely play the piano with us inside them if they needed to. And there's one other detail I think is important. None of the piano covers Chris plays are included in the official Deltarune soundtrack. What is included, however, is the song Concert for You. This is the 4-second track of random piano keys that plays whenever Chris tries to play the piano with the soul inside them. A popular interpretation of the song's title is that the you is the player, and this is all Chris is willing to play for us. However, when they think they are alone, and there isn't anything else they need to do, they perform a concert just for them. Also in the vents, you can spawn Asgore peeing in the bathroom. He is seemingly here doing maintenance for Carol's house, and if you stick with him long enough, you will give this monologue.
Yeah, cleaning up sure works up an appetite. I wonder if the kitchen has any treats for me. No, not now. I can't afford to take a break. Now, more than ever, I need to concentrate. Settle this once for all. I've got to go look again.
Asgore will leave the bathroom, but you can find him again inside the master bedroom. You can access it through the vents, although you can't actually explore and can only see a few things. There, Asgore continues his monologue.
We're almost there, aren't we, old friend? This time, for sure, Tor will finally see. See what really happened. That I just wanted to protect everyone. And this time, she'll have to believe me. They all will. Then, We'll all be a happy family again, won't we? It sure is beautiful, isn't it? This black shard.
You may have begun to connect the dots yourself, but if not, I'll spell it out for you. What is that noise? Do you guys hear that noise? Are we getting bombed? We know that Carol employs Asgore to do something for her, and while this could just be regular maintenance work, the way Toriel talked about it made it seem a lot more antisocial. We also know that Asgore was previously the chief of police, but was kicked off the force, and that he's investigating something in his basement. It seems like whatever controversy got Asgore in trouble, he's still investigating. And with this scene in Carol's bedroom, it implies that Carol is helping Asgore investigate. We can't see much of Carol's room, but we can see a corkboard that looks like a conspiracy board. We can also deduce what Asgore is investigating, because if Carol is helping Asgore with an unsolved mystery, it is likely whatever happened to Des. Asgore investigating Des's disappearance is really the only thing that makes sense, unless he met Onion and is also investigating the Song from the Sea or something. There is one more small detail that gives us a clue about what happened to Des. Asgore references a black shard in his monologue. If you remember, the black shard is the item that the knight drops when we defeat it in Chapter 3. This implies that Asgore not only knows about Dark Worlds, but also may have fought the knight himself. It also implies that whatever happened to Des relates to the Dark Worlds. I'll save the rest of the theories for later, but Asgore will clearly be important to the story as the game goes on. The last scene we can spy on, and also the one that progresses the story, is if we go down to the basement. You will be able to leave the vents and spy on Noelle and Susie's conversation as they are studying. Now, this scene is cute, and it's fun to see Susie and Noelle try to flirt with each other, but for the sake of time, I am skipping basically all of it. These scenes go on for a while, and all that's really important is Susie and Noelle are falling in love. Plus, my voice actors would go on strike if I made them voice act a scene that's 10 minutes long. There's references to Chris's weird behavior, references to the in-universe game Dragon Blazers, and some talk about Rousey looking like Asriel, but it's not anything we don't already know. At any point during Susie and Noelle's talk, you can move a present out of the way and turn the power off. Susie and Noelle will go down to the basement to see what happened, continuing the talk. To progress, you need to shuffle close to either Susie or Noelle, who will get scared. Moving towards them again causes them to run away. Because we have a white angel ornament covering us, which I'm sure does not symbolize anything, they think we are just a mouse. So, Noelle scoops us up with a tray and brings us to the living room to dispose of. However, Noelle and Susie get distracted and leave, allowing you to finally make your way to Des's room. You head back to the guitar, but just before you reach it, a hockey puck flies out, stunning us, and Chris emerges from under the bed. They pick us and the guitar up, but before they can do anything, we hear Noelle and Susie outside, about to enter the room. Chris quickly enters the closet as their friends walk in. Noelle seems pretty anxious to be in Des's room, but Susie's presence settles her down, and they continue to talk, mostly gossiping about Chris. In this section, you are supposed to make your way over to the guitar. Chris will try to hit us back with a hockey stick, but we can distract them by setting off battery-powered toy Santas. Chris will also be distracted by Noelle and Susie's dialogue, giving you a reason to pay attention to it, even if you are just trying to speed through the cutscene. Once you reach the guitar, Chris will attack us and repeatedly hit it. This scares Susie and Noelle at first, but eventually they realize Chris is just doing Chris things. Susie walks into the closet and tells us to be quiet, grabbing the guitar on their way out. Again, Noelle seems anxious that Susie has the guitar, but suggests Susie plays it, and they leave the room. After they leave, Chris makes a phone call to the person they were talking to before. Susie, guitar. I'll be right there. Chris then puts the soul back into them, but when we leave, they will trip after a few steps. I guess the soul is something they need to adjust to once it's inside them, although it could also them just being really stressed out. Stepping outside the room leads to another cutscene, and this time I'll let my award-winning voice actors take it away.
Hey, just so you know, me and Chris, we're in a band, so don't be surprised if I'm pretty good. Oops. Sure you want to hear this?
Huh? Yeah, of course. I just always liked listening to someone play.
Okay, then check this out. Dude, I actually kind of kicked ass with that one.
Can we get an encore?
Just for my fans. Shut up, that was a remix. Man, today's been awesome. Not to be weird or anything.
It's not weird at all. I really like hanging out with you too, Susie.
Sweet. Maybe we could, like, I don't know, hang out tomorrow or something? Unless you're busy.
No, I'm not busy. It's just tomorrow is, well, it's the festival, Susie.
Oh, yeah.
Would you want to go together?
I
The lights.
Oh yes, someone to turn them off.
Hello, Mr. Dreamer.
I don't mean to interrupt your schoolwork, but is that a snack tray?
Yes. Feel free to have some.
Don't mind if I do. Phew, cleaning sure does work up an appetite. Figured I'd get in a bite before your mother's home.
Oh, well, there's no rush, you know. She has work. She's not gonna be home for hours.
What do you mean? I just saw her outside the window.
Mom? Mom is... Susie, I'm sorry. I think you should...
Hello, Carol.
Mom,
Get your hands off that guitar.
Hey, what's your...
She didn't know, Mom. I was the one who gave her the guitar. I told her to play it. I just wanted to hear it again, and she's not a bad person,
Noel.
Mom.
Kitchen, now.
Hey, listen. Noelle didn't do anything wrong. It's my fault. I took the guitar and...
Leave.
What?
You are not welcome. Leave. And don't talk to my daughter again.
Hey, I can...
Susie, just go.
Well, guess who's taking your daughter? To the festival tomorrow, jerk.
I'll be in the kitchen.
Asgore, if you're going to eat the snack tray, do it outside.
Yes, Carol.
We finally meet Noelle's mom, Carol. I am sure you already have some thoughts and opinions on her, but there is one more cutscene before we leave. When Chris heads for the door, Carol approaches them. You felt something like ice on your shoulder.
My apologies about just now, Chris. As you know, you are welcome here anytime.
Your first instinct after watching this cutscene might be that Carol is both the person Chris was calling and the knight. It seems like the mysterious person Chris calls is the knight, based on their odd text box and manner of speech, and their knowledge of Dark Worlds. So when Chris calls them and they say they will be right there, and then Carol shows up, it makes Carol look suspicious. Honestly, that was my initial assumption when I first saw this scene. However, a lot of people prefer a slightly different theory, that being Des is the knight, not Carol. I'm not gonna spend a lot of time on it here, but at this point we have enough information to see both sides of the argument. Starting with Carol, everything about her is suspicious, from her icy demeanor to inspecting Des's guitar when she comes home. She owns multiple black katanas, which could be the knight's weapon, and she also owns many heart-shaped objects, which could represent the soul. However, there's also a lot of problems with Carol being the knight, like how does she have time to do all this? And why is she terrorizing some teenagers? Even if Carol is in the night, however, most people believe that she is still working with them and Chris. She comes home as soon as Chris calls the secret caller, implying she is who Chris called. Although, I actually made a video sometime back where I try to disprove this theory and prove Carol's innocence. I'd recommend checking that video out after this one. It's just an extra 20 minutes. For Des, her being the Knight would explain her disappearance, and it would also explain how the Knight has so much time to do all this. Des and the Knight also both share the Lost Girl motif, and are associated with baseball imagery. While we don't know what Des looks like, it's likely that they vaguely resemble the Knight's normal appearance, who is taller than the Fun Gang and has antlers. There's also comparisons between Noelle and Des, and two characters from Mother 3, and the Mother series is one of Toby Fox's biggest inspirations, but I'll avoid talking about it to avoid spoiling that game. Even though the evidence for Des being a part of the conspiracy between the Knight and Chris is a lot more hidden, I find it a lot more believable than Carol also being a part of the conspiracy. However, it's not like I wouldn't understand if Carol is actually evil and working with Chris in the Night. Anyway, after you leave Carol's house, you watch another short cutscene of Susie and Asgore. Susie tells us she couldn't find the code, and Asgore, who doesn't understand what's going on, comforts us. Susie helps herself to some of Asgore's snacks, and then you are free to leave and explore hometown again. Once we are separated from Asgore, Susie stops us to tell us that she did actually see the code in Des's guitar, but couldn't stop to write it down or memorize it, saying they will try again tomorrow. So, while Chris succeeded in keeping Susie away from the guitar today, it will be a lot harder in the future to do so. Almost all the NPCs will be gone from hometown, and all of the buildings are closed. If you try to go to Chris's house, which is what the game suggests you do, the door will be locked. Susie will suggest going down to the church to see if Toriel is at choir practice. The only thing of note on the way to the church is at the diner. If you try to go in, you receive this dialogue. Looks like the diner is full. A customer in the back notices you. He holds up a takeout box and taps it happily. This dialogue only shows up if you receive the egg in Chapter 3. Just like how the Forgotten Man seemingly shows up in the Light World in Chapter 2, it seems like he appears again. I guess he's apparently just some regular guy in the Light World. It's alright if you forgot about this or don't understand how they can be both in the Light World and the Dark World, but keep this in mind as we go through the chapter. When we eventually arrive at the church, a new cutscene will begin. If you remember what the mysterious caller told Chris, you probably know where this is going.
Well, let's ask your mom for the key, I guess. Hope she doesn't mind us ruining choir practice. You'll get her, right? Chris? Hey, Chris? I don't think they're having choir practice. That goddamn Knight, making one right where everyone can see. Chris, let's think logically, right? There's no way they can get out of there without us seeing them. If we just wait here, we'll be able to catch them leaving, right?
But we aren't logical.
You're damn right we aren't. Hey, you think you can scare us? We'll show you who really rules the dark. Come on, Chris. What's with this place? Kinda gives me the creeps. Let's go.
We have arrived at Chapter 4's Dark World, which the save point tells us is named the First Sanctuary. Additionally, Dark Sanctuary is the name of the song that plays as you explore this first area. This track is fine on its own, but it will be remixed and referenced in a bunch of songs throughout this Dark World. Now, giving away the names of the tracks would spoil part of the chapter, but they are some of my favorite songs Toby Fox has ever made. If you are unable to play the game yourself, I'd still recommend checking out the music. It's one of the most memorable parts of the game, even if I don't talk about it much in this video. Continuing forward, we find a puzzle where we need to play the piano. This is mundane to us and Susie, but to Chris, they are probably mad as hell they finally have to play the piano in front of the player. We also see a wall that we could climb up if we had the right tools, but for now we can't access it. In the next room, Susie and Chris spot the dark fountain, but before they can seal it, the knight appears. They separate us from Susie, but we can run at the knight. They will throw swords at us, and it's supposed to be a guaranteed loss. But on YouTube, you can find people who were able to make it to the knight. If you do make it, Chris will stand perfectly still while Susie yells at us to attack, and then the knight one-hits us. No matter what, Chris and Susie will fall down, sparking one of my favorite 5-second cutscenes in the game. In case you missed it, the glass pane said, "The legend of this world, Deltarune." Remember, this dark world takes place at the church, and as established before, the church's religion is based on the same prophecy that Rousey told us about. There must be a lot of prophecy-related items in the church that would turn into something in a dark world. So, throughout this dark world, we will see the literal prophecy spelled out to us in these glass panes. It is not as long-winded as Rousey's version, but at the same time, it can be very specific and directly reference events we already saw, or events that have yet to occur. The prophecy is one of the most interesting components not just of Chapter 4, but of the entire game, and the introduction to it being Susie shattering it as she falls is a pretty on-the-nose touch, and will make sense as we continue, if it doesn't already. When we land, Susie will notice that Chris is injured and try to heal us. You may have forgotten Susie can heal since it's not very good, and that's intentional. Even in the cutscene, Susie can't fully heal Chris. However, Rousey shows up and heals Chris, which disappoints Susie as she couldn't do it herself. Continuing forward, we find more prophecy panels, which Rousey explains to Chris and Susie like I just did. The first few aren't very interesting, but the first 2 panels of note read, "A world basked in purest light. Beneath it grew eternal night. The fountains freed the roaring cries, and titans shaped from darkened eyes." These seem to reference the titans Rousey described in his prophecy. Susie points out that this is a little different from Rousey's prophecy, to which Rousey says his version was a summary. I guess Rousey did not bother to tell us things he didn't consider to be important, which is insane, because the very next prophecy panel we see, and the first one that's not required to be viewed, reads as follows. "Jackenstein grows the beard." You all thought I was insane. Jackenstein isn't important, you're just making a weird joke. Well, boom! Definitive proof that Jackenstein is the most important character in the game. Jackenstein is the only Lightner directly referenced by name in the prophecy, meaning he is important enough to single out. And while Jackenstein growing a beard might seem like a joke event to throw in, whether or not he actually does grow a beard will tell us a lot about the other events in the prophecy. One of the biggest questions that the game explicitly asks you is whether or not the prophecy can be broken. It might seem naive to think that a prophecy as old as time could be broken by just a couple of teenagers, until you realize that's what we did like 2 minutes ago. So far, we can see that a lot of the events have happened, but a lot of these events have not. Additionally, it is arguable whether or not the prophecy was even right about the events that have already happened. I will address these panels when we encounter them, but I think Jackenstein's panel being so straightforward is a good indication for how strict the prophecy is. If he grows the beard, we know that the prophecy is still in motion, but as long as he doesn't, we know that there's a chance that the other events might not happen either. The next 2 prophecy panels demonstrate how detailed some panels are compared to others. The light and dark, both burning dire, a countdown to the Earth's expire. The pointy-headed will say toothpaste, and then boy. The first panel, while we can assume it means something about the roaring or the angel's heaven, is not very specific, to the point where if this event ever happens, it might not even be clear that the panel is referring to it. On the other hand, the second panel shows a picture of Lancer, and says he will say toothpaste boy, which Susie points out totally happened. Rousey reminds us that the prophecy is 100% accurate, and everything that happens in it will come to pass. But during their conversation, the fun gang sees something in the shadows and follows it. We pass a library section that has an obvious puzzle we can't solve yet for plot reasons, and find the next panel of the prophecy, confirming that there are 3 heroes. But as we are reading it, an axe flies out and hits the panel, shattering it. This makes the room fall into complete darkness, forcing us to rely on sound and these weird vibration cues to continue. We eventually run into a dark shape with a red outline, which chases us back to where we came from. We eventually find a soul light source, which Susie calls out.
Look, light! Alright, you losers. Bring it on!
What you doing?
Who? Huh? What the hell are you doing?
Looking for the light switch. But, seems I got a little lost. You wouldn't mind walking me back to the study, would you? Got something I gotta finish writing, you see.
Yeah, no. We're kinda in a hurry here. We can't just babysit every random darkner we find.
I see. Good enough reason, that one.
So anyway, we'll be...
What's a darkner, anywho?
You mean you don't? Chris, if this guy's on a darkner, then... Ugh, things will get messy if he gets hurt. Fine, you can come with us. Just don't slow us down.
Alright. You got a little missy.
It won't be confirmed until later, but if you played Undertale, you know exactly who this turtle is. Gerson, Alvin's deceased father. The reason no one recognizes him is because Susie is new to the town and never met Gerson, Rousey is a Darkner and probably never knew Gerson, and Chris likes lying to us and Susie, so they aren't going to explain this to anyone. But wait, if Gerson is dead, how can he appear in the Dark World? This will more or less be answered later, but it's something to think about as we continue. There are a lot of fun scenes with Gerson in the next few rooms where he continues to annoy Susie, but I think you can understand Gerson and Susie's relationship with just their first scene. Continuing past the book puzzle, we see the same 3 heroes panel as before. Rousey tells us that even if the prophecy breaks, it will appear somewhere else, as the prophecy can't be changed. We can spot another prophecy ahead, but before we can see it, it shatters.
But hey, what gives?
Oopsie daisy. Darn my clumsiness.
Damn it, you broke it again, didn't you?
Well, we were following that prophecy so closely, I couldn't quite see where I was going.
Hey, guys, there's another way here. Out the way, old man.
Susie, don't run ahead so fast.
There's a small detail that might be obvious to some, but wasn't to me on my first playthrough, which is that by breaking this prophecy, Gerson reveals the way to continue. We literally had to break the prophecy to progress the story, implying there might be some truth to Gerson's opinion. After Susie and Rousey run ahead, you can talk to Gerson alone. There's a lot of dialogue paths here, but I'll play the one I think is most important.
Have something to say to me?
You broke it on purpose.
Me? Why do you suppose I would do that?
Don't like prophecies.
Well, now a fairy tale's a pretty little thing. Ain't it nice to believe a glimmer here and there? I just think those words shine a little bit too bright. A path so blue, it's all you can see. So I say, why don't we go between the lines? It's darker there.
These last 2 scenes outline Gerson's philosophy on the prophecy. Unlike Rousey, who believes in it completely, or Susie, who is mystified by it, Gerson doesn't give it much weight. He believes that the prophecy can be broken, or at least isn't as strict as the fun gang thinks. That's why he keeps breaking the panels, to encourage us to forge our own path and not just carry out what the prophecy says. It's a breath of fresh air in a game that began with, your choices don't matter. And my question is Gerson trying to tell us this or somebody else? Of course we want our choices to matter, it's our video game after all. It's the other heroes that will need some convincing. After solving another piano puzzle, you will make it to Gerson's study, which acts as a hub world for Chapter 4's Dark World. Something I really like about Chapter 4 is that, unlike the first 3 chapters, the map is a lot more open, which allows you to do things in any order you want to. There's a lot of backtracking which I actually enjoy, as you will see things on your first run through that you know you can't access yet, but will remember to visit later. Anyway, in Gerson's study, there is a shop that we can buy items and equipment at, but we can also talk to Gerson about a few topics. If you ask him about the night, Gerson will say,
Now that you mention it, just before you came in, a figure with a sword flew in that tower up there. But it's locked with some sort of contraption. I reckon if you could get to the East Bell Tower, you might be able to open it. But scaling the bell tower doesn't seem easy without tools. Meanwhile, the Northwest Library got lots of nice books. It might help take your mind off it. It's that upper left door.
Which doesn't tell us much lore-wise, but gives us an idea on where to head. This also confirms that the knight visited Gerson's study, which some people believe is important. If we ask Gerson what he's doing, he says he's writing a letter, and has Susie proofread it for him. However, all he's written so far is the word, the. Above Gerson's fireplace is the Legend of the Magic Axe, a short poster we can read. Upon reading it, Susie assumes there is some kind of cool axe hidden within the library. We can ask Gerson about this to receive this dialogue.
That plaque up there, about the magic axe.
Oh, young miss wanted to chat about it, did she?
The hell did I say that?
I see. Then I'll just talk to myself about it a bit then. Legend has it, there's an axe hidden in these walls. And whoever wields it will have great magic power. But it ain't just hidden, it's locked away by some doohickey. Yes sir, maybe you search around, you might figure something out.
That magic power thing. Think it'd work on everyone?
Well, it's worth a shot, ain't it?
Chris, let's try and find that axe if we can.
You may not have realized it, I certainly didn't on my first playthrough, but this side quest actually takes us to the Shadow Crystal boss of Chapter 4. Like Chapter 3, I will explain how you do it during the chapter instead of at the end, but for now, we can't actually make any progress towards it. Heading to the east corridor is a dead end without any climbing gear, as Gerson told us. However, you can view an optional prophecy panel that reads, "The Queen's chariot cannot be stopped." This is obviously a reference to Queen in Chapter 2, but the wording of the panel paired with what actually transpired is a bit odd. You might think that this refers to the first fight against Bruhlie, which took place on the roller coaster. Or maybe it refers to the end of Chapter 2, when Bruhlie saves us on that roller coaster. Either way, the end result of the fight was a loss for Queen, so her chariot was stopped. However, the image that appears on the panel is the car from the scene with Queen, Chris, and Noelle driving through Cyber City. In that scene, Queen's car runs over a bunch of other cars, so in that aspect, her chariot cannot be stopped. Well, until it is. So does this mean that the prophecy has already been broken? Furthermore, I have stated that there is an alternate route in Deltarune that changes parts of the game. Well, this driving scene with Queen is completely absent in that route, which again implies that the prophecy was broken. Now, it's possible that the prophecy is not as strict as Rousey thinks, and the mere appearance of the roller coasters or the cars is enough to qualify it as counting for the prophecy. But either way, this panel shows us that the prophecy is either breakable or a lot more flexible than Rousey and Susie might think. As Gerson tells us, maybe we should go in between the lines of the prophecy instead of following it to a T. Anyway, to actually progress the story, you go northwest like Gerson said. In the first area, a blue book will fly at you, and if it touches you, it triggers a battle with two of the wizards we saw back in Chapter 3 during the Egg side quest. I'm not sure how obvious the connection is here, but I think it's really easy to overthink this. We find out here that the blue wizard Darkners are called Bibliocs, and considering they turn into books and attack with books, it's likely that they are Dark World manifestations of Bibles, or some religious-themed book. Since Chapter 1, we can observe a book of hymns lying on a table in Chris's living room, so it is likely that the wizard in Chapter 3 is just a Darkner version of this book. I feel like this is a pretty concrete theory. However, there is another theory that suggests Rousey's light railed form is a Bible. I'll go more into detail on this and other Rousey theories during theory time, and while it is interesting to think about, and there is some evidence for it, I think that the Biblioxes are supposed to be Bibles, not Rousey. You are supposed to continue up to progress, but to the left of this area is a fountain that you can throw money into. Depending on how much money you contribute, you will receive an item much later in the game. Donating less than $100 gets you a darker candy. Between $100 and $4.99 gets you a Scar Elixir. Between $500 and $19.99 gets you a Revivement. Between 2,000 and 9,999 gets you a Bitter Tear, an item which fully restores HP even if the user is not downed. And over 9,999 gets you a special armor piece known as the Gold Widow. This armor is great for defense, and also raises attack and magic by 1, but it also has a debuff of receiving 10% less dollars after battles. Its addition is a reference to the character Muffet from Undertale, a character that otherwise does not appear in Deltarune. I don't know if it's ever been confirmed, but I think the reason that Muffet, along with a handful of other Undertale characters, don't appear in Deltarune is because they were only added into Undertale as rewards for Kickstarter goals. Continuing up, we reach our library with more piano puzzles where you play notes to shift around blocks. We can observe Rousey concerned that something is in this library, and while he never says what, it seems like Rousey is more anxious than usual in this Dark World. He also wanted to stay ahead of Susie for some reason, but we won't find out why until later in this chapter. After this room are some split paths, both of which lead to prophecy panels that contain piano notes for us to play. In the left path, you can observe this weird NPC, but as far as I know, there is no way to access it and talk to him. According to the Deltarune wiki, he does not even have dialogue if you cheat the game to talk to him. I'm not sure why they are here, but they are. The piano you need to play is just down the middle path, and after playing the piano, Susie remarks how they should just do whatever the prophecy says. She asks Rousey if he can memorize it for them, to which Rousey says he already knows it. Susie doesn't say anything at first, but presses Rousey further in the next room.
Hey, Rousey, if you know the whole prophecy already, why didn't you just say how to do the piano?
Huh? Well, I just thought, isn't it better if I don't say anything?
Why?
Hey, I think I found a light. Whoops. Ow.
Here, let me...
Everyone feeling better?
Yeah, thanks.
Susie is beginning to catch on that Rousey is hiding something, but Rousey was able to deflect from her questions. Sooner or later, however, Rousey will need to explain what is going on with him and knowing the prophecy. We also get another instance of Rousey one-upping Susie in this scene, unintentionally discouraging her from using her healing magic. Something I neglected to mention before is that Susie will actually refuse to use her healing spell after the first time Rousey one-ups her. It now costs 102% TP to use, which is unobtainable in the game. It seems like Susie will need some encouragement to want to start healing again, but for now, all we can do is move forward in the dark. After a little bit, a mysterious voice calls out to us, and we end up in a boss fight against an enemy known as Jackenstein. Now, among the Deltarune community, this is widely believed to be the best mini-boss fight in the game, based on the music, gameplay, and humor of the fight, even though it doesn't have much plot relevance. However, I have something to admit. I did not care for Jackenstein. His battle theme is a bit catchy, but pales in comparison to dozens of other tracks from chapters 3 and 4. But more importantly, I found the gameplay to be pretty annoying. How the Jackenstein fight works is that TP gained from defense is reduced a ton, and Gerson doesn't get you any. You are also completely unable to attack them. What you need to do is collect these yellow pellets in a maze that replaces a typical bullet hell attack. There will be obstacles in the maze you have to avoid, which is very reminiscent of the browser game World's Hardest Game. Each pellet is 2 TP, and once you reach 60 TP, you can use Unleash with Chris. You have to use Unleash 3 times to defeat Jackenstein. To complicate things, sometimes Jackenstein does this. I found this gameplay loop to get pretty repetitive, although I think I misunderstood part of this fight. I assumed that you actually had to speed through the maze to avoid Jackenstein saying, "You're taking too long." However, it happens automatically once you reach a certain point, so you can just take your time and collect each pellet. Still, I don't find the World's Hardest Game to be riveting gameplay, especially when compared to Punch-Out or Legend of Zelda. As for the comedy in the fight, I found it to be pretty cringe and Friday Night Funkin' core. I understand if you find it funny, but it's just not really my thing. There are 2 good things about this fight though. First is that its gameplay mechanic gives a use to items that fill up your TP. They were pretty useless before since most fights don't require a set amount of TP to beat, but here they speed things up a lot. Second, and more importantly, is that this boss fight introduces a new TP mechanic that appears in later fights. Those fights mix the normal bullet hell with collecting TP pellets, and I find those fights to be a lot more enjoyable. I should also mention that, like most mechanics in Deltarune, this actually has an in-game explanation, and one that's important to the game's lore. Throughout Deltarune, you may have noticed that the soul is heavily associated with light. Whenever we close a fountain, our soul shines brightly, and in the few Deltarune songs with lyrics, there are references to our heart shining. Here, it's made clear that the soul's ability to light up is not a small detail, but the key to beating some enemies. Our soul can shine so brightly that it makes even the darkest of areas light up, and while that may seem like an insignificant detail, it becomes very important later on. After you beat Jackenstein, he will run off in fear of us seeing his true appearance, and bump his head on a chandelier. Rousey will attempt to heal his pain, but it doesn't work. Susie begins to say something, but changes her mind and walks away. If you follow her, someone will show up to talk to her.
How's the adventure, hero?
Old man? Shouldn't you be busy writing a letter or something?
Shouldn't you be helping that pumpkin fella?
Nah, Rosie's got it covered. I quit.
Quit? Quit what?
You know, healing. That green sparkle thing.
So you don't like doing it?
Well, I don't know actually. At first I was really excited I could do it, but like, I sort of realized I just suck at it. Heh.
What if you practiced? Put a little shell into it.
I mean, when people aren't looking, I was kind of trying to practice a little, but I sort of realized, you know, I'll never get as good as Rousey. So what's the point? So everyone can see how bad I am? Should I just stick to what I'm good for? You know, hurting people, magic.
Is that so? Didn't take you for a purple-bellied coward.
Coward? Hey, what do you mean by that?
You're afraid of making some green little sparkles?
Look, just casting it isn't a big deal.
Alrighty then. Here.
What?
I pricked my finger with my pen earlier. If you're not a coward, give me your best shot.
Fine, if it gets you to shut up, take this.
Oops, my letter.
Oh, the ouch, the hort, it's gone.
Susie? Susie, that was a great idea.
Huh?
I was wondering why my healing wasn't working. I suppose I was only healing the outside, but Susie, your healing blast seemed to hit the spot.
Huh? Well, I was actually just trying to heal that old man.
Old man?
Yeah, he's... Huh. Guess he left.
It's pretty obvious what this scene represents story-wise, so I won't bother explaining it, but it does have an effect gameplay-wise. Susie can use her healing magic again, and this time it costs 85% to use. While it's still weaker than Rousey's, each time you use it, the TP cost decreases, while the strength increases. This does max out at a certain point, but you can actually get Susie's healing to be better than Rousey if you grind long enough. Now, in my normal playthrough, I never actually took the time to do this, but since we have almost a year until Chapter 5 releases, you might as well get started. After this cutscene, you need to talk to Jackenstein to receive the Climbing Claws. This will allow you to climb up the walls you have been seeing around the sanctuary. To progress, you have to go east, but you can also backtrack to various areas to reach previously inaccessible rooms. If you climb the wall in the library, you will find a golden piano. This is the golden choir that the Legend of the Magic Axe references, and as it hints, we need to find 3 collections of music notes throughout the sanctuary. They are hidden in 3 more sections only accessible via climbing, with 2 of these being in the first area you were in before you reached the study. Those 2 areas are pretty straightforward, but the third area is a bit interesting. It is hidden behind a fountain that you can throw money into, and is another dark maze that you have to rely on vibrations to get through. Upon reaching the notes, another mysterious entity will chase you out of the maze, until Gerson intercepts the party. He invites the fun gang to a tea party, paralleling the earlier scene in Castle Town. There isn't that much important stuff here, but it's used to show Susie's new admiration for Gerson. This scene can only happen after Gerson taught her to use her healing magic, so it seems Susie recognized this and is thankful. Once you find all 3 areas, or once you look up the notes online, you can go back to the gold piano to play the melody. This will open a new passage in the study. When you go inside it, Susie immediately notices the axe and walks over to it.
Damn, so this is the magic axe, huh?
You got the...
Wait a tick. You gotta pay for that.
Hey, the heck are you talking about?
This is to the inside of my study, ain't it? Nothing else was free, so why'd you think we'd start here?
Good one. I'm taking the axe now.
Don't think I'm serious? Check the price tag.
Huh? Price? What? It says it costs, $900 million!
Didn't realize it was still on discount. But I know, you worked real hard to get here. So how about a trade? If you, and you alone, can best my challenge, I give it to you for free.
Knew you'd say that. What do you want?
How about a haircut?
A haircut? Alright, sure. Which hair do you want me to cut?
Oh, any of them. They're all too long, see? Just get one and I'll give it to you.
Alright, I'll start with your beard. Huh? Stay still. I get it. You think I'm gonna go easy on you, huh? What the?
Ah, so you want to get serious, do you? And tell me first, can you hear it? Can you hear its song singing from the deep? That is the ringing of the hammer of justice.
That is right. Gerson is actually our secret boss of Chapter 4. More specifically, it is his alter ego, the Hammer of Justice. There is a lot to unpack with this fight, but let's address the biggest elephant in the room first. Did Gerson reference Onion? Remember, back in Chapter 2, Onion told us he heard a song coming from the deep sea, and that he was going to investigate. Here, Gerson says that he, or maybe his battle music, is a song singing from the deep. So, is this what Onion was hearing? Did Gerson kidnap Onion? Probably not the second part, but I do think this is a connection between the two characters. My guess is Onion will casually show up in Chapter 5, apologize for being absent in Chapter 4, and make some allusions to Gerson or a hammer or something. Now for the actual fight, just like how Spamton Neo was a reference to Mettaton Neo from Undertale, the Hammer of Justice is a reference to Undyne's fight in Undertale. Both Gerson and Undyne use the Green Soul mode, a mode where the soul cannot move and instead have to block arrows flying at them in 4, later 8 directions. This connection makes sense, as in Undertale, Gerson talks about how Undyne looked up to him, and used to follow him around to fight bad guys. Undyne's battle theme is also called Spear of Justice, clearly connecting to Gerson's Hammer of Justice persona. But the Green Soul mode is not the only mechanical difference in this fight. Susie fights Gerson alone, so you can't attack with Chris or heal with Rousey. You also cannot use items in battle, and if you try, Gerson will take them from you. This means you only have 2 ways to heal. You can either equip the Absorb Axe, a weapon found in the library that heals a whopping 2 HP per use in this fight, or you use Susie's healing magic. This fight is pretty difficult, but like I said before, each time you use Susie's healing magic, it improves. So each time you attempt the fight, the battle becomes a little easier. Additionally, if you try to use Rude Buster in the fight, Gerson will deflect it back at you, and you have to press a button to send it back. If you fail to deflect it, you will take damage. I'm not very good at this. I feel like I either misunderstand when you are supposed to time to press, or it's just super tight. So I'd recommend avoiding Rude Buster on your first few attempts. The fight will automatically end on the 21st round, but you can end it quicker by attacking, using Rude Buster, and healing. Defending won't speed up the fight and won't even give you much TP, so I'd recommend attacking every single round unless you can heal. Before I show what happens when you win, I want to draw your attention to the battle dialogue. Unlike most battles, where the dialogue is either a bunch of jokes or information you can receive elsewhere in the game, Gerson's dialogue is very important. The battle goes as follows.
Did you ever hear that old tale? Yes, the old tale based upon the prophecy, Lord of the Hammer.
Think I heard about it. What happens?
Chapter 1. The March of the Dark King. The heroes defeat the king and stop the dragon. Chapter 2. The City of Shining. The heroes do battle in chariots to save the queen. Chapter 3. The Isles of Northern Light. The heroes travel among the islands and catch a glimpse of a lost land. Chapter 4. The Trials of the Holy Hammer. A great smith gives the heroes a terrible weapon. Chapter 5. The Field of Pink and Gold. The vast garden is charred in an inferno of jealousy.
What happens next?
Haha. Who knows? There's only one more chapter. After that, it all stopped. The next book, it never did get written. The story became so grand, so overwhelming. Some say it's hauled up the author himself. The ones who could write the next, the youth. The pen was lying right there for them to pick up, to make the next page. They never did. But you, my dear, I see a story lit up in your eyes, burning bright, burning black, burning up everything. The bell's ringing now. Seems we've reached the final rounds. So, how do you think it all ends? No. How do you want it to end?
An ending, huh? If I could choose, I guess. I wouldn't have an ending. It's just better if stuff just goes on forever, right?
Well, ain't that something? At this late hour, with the bells ringing out their justice, you choose eternity. But there is one thing that can override the dark. A white pen known as hope. Miss, I believe this is what you hold.
Me? Nah, Chris has the pen. My weapon's like a hairbrush or something.
Is that so? Is that so?
Yep, now shut up and give me that axe.
Gerson's book, Lord of the Hammer, the book that we have seen since the very beginning of Chapter 1, is based on the prophecy. This has a lot of implications, but what's most apparent are the chapters that Gerson describes. The first 4 all make sense and correspond to the chapters we played so far. So, what Gerson says about Chapter 5 should predict that chapter's future events. In Lord of the Hammer, a pink and yellow field is burned to the ground, so we will likely see some fire ignite during Chapter 5. The reference to pink and yellow is also interesting, as those colors show up over and over again in Deltarune. But for now, I'll leave it at that. What Gerson says next is also interesting. He claims that the author couldn't finish the story, and hoped that the next generation could finish it, but they never did. Considering Gerson is the author, we can interpret this as him wanting Alvin to finish the story, but instead he became a priest. There is not a lot that explains why Alvin worries Gerson was disappointed in him, but this gives us an explanation for why this rift could be there. Gerson took the prophecy, which people likely believed was a stoic, unchanging prediction for the future, and made his own interpretation of it. And, instead of being ostracized, Gerson was rewarded immensely for making something new. So, when Alvin decided not to follow in Gerson's footsteps and instead follow the original prophecy, Gerson might have been disappointed. This is a bit ironic, as Alvin could choose whether he wanted to write his own story or follow one already made. And under Gerson's current philosophy, you would think Gerson would support Alvin's right to choose. Later in the chapter, we will get a resolution to the storyline, but for now, let's move on to what's most important about this scene. Gerson's opinion of Susie. It's clear throughout Chapter 4 that Gerson is especially I'm gonna bear up again, sorry. It's clear throughout Chapter 4 that Gerson is especially fond of Susie. While Susie is resistant at first, the Jackenstein fight makes her respect the old man, and this side quest further cements their friendship. But why Gerson cared so much about Susie in particular is never elaborated on, until now. Gerson recognizes Susie's power that's been in plain sight since her first scene. Her power to change fate. Susie is not restricted by the "your choices don't matter" mantra we see throughout the game. If anything, she's the reason why our choices don't matter. She cuts us off before we can answer questions, refuses to wear ribbons, and acts on her own all the time. When you think of characters in media that break the fourth wall and that the player can't control, you probably think of characters like Flowey and Sans from Undertale, or maybe Monaco from Doki Doki Literature Club. Generally, the story hypes these characters up to be antagonistic forces as powerful as the player, and we eventually face off against them at some point in the story. But with Deltarune, this archetype is flipped on its head, and the all-powerful character, who can change the game's timeline, is allies with us. Susie also has the added caveat of, unlike Sans, Flowey, and Monica, not realizing her true power, needing others to inspire hope in her that she can be a hero. Gerson straight up tells Susie that she has the power of hope, but while she deflects from this by saying Chris's weapon is a pen, so they must wield the pen of hope, Gerson laughs this off. And thinking about the events of the game, we can see why. Susie inspired hope in Lancer that the Darkners and Lightners could live peacefully, inspired hope in Bruhlie that he did not have to be a pretentious asshole to receive attention, he inspired hope in Tenna that he can continue to serve Lightners, and inspired hope in Rousey that he was more than just an object. And whenever you heal with Susie, what is she doing? She is raising our HP, or hope. The HP stands for hope theory is a theory that I'm sure has been around since forever, but it's something I only made the connection on during Chapter 4. Since I did, I can't look at the game the same way. Back in Undertale, it was explicitly confirmed via Sans that our LV was not just level, but level of violence, and the EXP we earned was actually execution points. It would follow that HP is an acronym too, and realistically, what else can it be besides hope? When you finally beat Gerson, a cutscene will play where Susie charges up a healing spell, distracting Gerson and allowing Susie to finally cut off one of his hairs. Afterwards, the cutscene continues as follows.
How's that, old man?
That was the most fun I have ever had.
See how I used my healing just now? Guess this is mine now, huh?
Justice Axe was added to your weapons.
And take this too. For some reason, I found this weird piece of glass in my desk. Felt like someone really wanted me to use this thing, but it didn't interest me, so you can take it.
Shadow Crystal was added to your key items. Not only do we get the axe, but a Shadow Crystal as well. Gerson doesn't mention someone giving it to him, but he clarifies that he didn't use it. This implies that simply having the Shadow Crystal is part of what made Jevil and Spamton go insane. But there are also other explanations that explain why Gerson is chill, but Jevil and Spamton were not. All three, along with Ram, were connected to the theme of freedom. But while Jevil, Spamton, and Ram failed at reaching freedom, Gerson genuinely is free. He wrote his own interpretation of the prophecy and received nothing but praise for it. And now, in death, he is free to do whatever he wants. Gerson's battle theme even uses the freedom leitmotif, but people have pointed out that doesn't sound exactly like the others. It is a variation, and feels more energetic and loose than in Spamton's or Jevil's. This could be Gerson is really free, while the other guys are not. Additionally, we can use the Shadow Crystal in a few places. If you use it in most rooms, it will say you thought you saw the lobby of the church. But we've established Shadow Crystals let you see through Dark Worlds. What's more interesting is if you use it in front of a prophecy panel, it will tell you, for some strange reason, no matter how you look, the prophecy's text doesn't warp in the crystal's lens. It seems like the only thing immune from the crystal's powers is the prophecy. No matter how you look at it, it will stay the same. We just had an entire boss fight dedicated to arguing why the prophecy can be changed. But here, it suggested that, despite our hopes, the prophecy is inevitable. As for the Justice Axe, it is the highest attack stat weapon Susie can receive in the game. However, it does not have any special abilities unlike the other secret boss drops. This is a little bit surprising, as we were promised it was some magic axe. However, if you inspect it, it says, in order to receive this item, you had to become much stronger, implying Susie's increased healing power was the magical powers Gerson told us about. I will also mention that Susie and Gerson have slightly different dialogue in that last scene, depending on if you beat it on the first try or not. But there's nothing that important in either version, so I didn't even play that part of the cutscene. On your way out, Gerson will stop you and have one last talk of Susie.
Well, I'll be seeing you around now.
Yeah, I guess we will. Why'd you help me so much? You didn't have to.
You remind me a bit of someone I used to know.
Who?
Just a character from that old story.
Lord of the Hammer, huh? Hell if I'm reading that. So, wait a second. Isn't that what Dragon Blazers was based on?
Yep. And so they changed parts of the story. Of course, the biggest fans got mad. But isn't it interesting? The book was already an interpretation of something else. Stories can be retold. They can be changed. That's what I believe.
Ah.
The words on a wall called you a hero. Wherever you end up being, I'm sure it'll be tremendous.
Anyway, which Dragon Blazers character am I?
Right. You are the dragon.
That's what I was hoping.
The last lore drop we received from this side quest is that Dragon Blazers, the game Noelle and Susie have been referencing since Chapter 1, is based on Lord of the Hammer, which means it's based on the prophecy. Now, no character connecting Lord of the Hammer to the prophecy makes sense if Susie doesn't read, Rousey doesn't know that much about the Light World, and Chris purposely tries to give us as little information as they can. But Susie is a huge fan of Dragon Blazers, and probably could have picked up on this fact a bit sooner. To me, this detail, and Gerson saying that Dragon Blazers changed part of Gerson's story, implies that Dragon Blazers might be completely unrecognizable from the prophecy, even if certain elements are similar. And if this is supposed to foreshadow later events, it could be yet another hint that the prophecy is not as concrete as we initially believed it to be, and that we can change it if we hope to. One last thing before we go back to the main story is Gerson saying Susie is the dragon. The dragon was actually a character Gerson mentioned in his own story, saying the heroes fought them and the king in Chapter 1. We obviously fought a king in Chapter 1, but unless Susie is literally the dragon, there's not a good one-to-one comparison we can make. But if Susie is supposed to be the dragon, how come she's a hero? Is she supposed to be a hero, or just by existing, is she changing the prophecy in real time? It's something to think about during the third act of this chapter. Once we are done with Gerson, we finally travel east to climb the bell tower. We will come across a large piano, but be unable to play it as we don't know the notes. Continuing east, we find another door locked with a green book, and this time Susie solves it immediately and runs in the room, hoping to find the notes there. At this point, Rousey asks us if he wants to close our eyes and think of Susie. If we do, we watch a scene where Susie encounters Gerson yet again, and thanks him for teaching her something without hurting her feelings. Gerson then has Susie transcribe the notes for Chris, and she returns to the party. But if we refuse to think about what Susie's doing, we get the chance to think of the night. The image of the night began to fade into your mind. The image changes. The helmet begins to come off. Suddenly, you tried extremely hard to picture Jackenstein. Jackenstein is in a nest, and the soccer balls are his eggs. Temmie shows up, and is mad that one of the soccer balls is... You realized you could just open your eyes. I told you, Jackenstein is the key to all of this. You all thought I was crazy, but yet again, I'm proven right. Not only is he named in the prophecy, the only character named in the prophecy, but he is one of the two characters we know is not the Knight. The other being Temmie. We can trust them 100% with our life, which is important when we can't even trust the player we control. Of course, maybe this was a misdirection by Chris, and Jackenstein is actually the Knight. But either way, Jackenstein's important. Also, this is why I said back in Chapter 2 that Chris sees what we see during these astral projections. There will be even more evidence later in the chapter, but if Chris sees what we see and even has control over it, I doubt that Rousey talks to them during these intermissions. My interpretation of those scenes is that Chris mumbles something like, "This is stupid, why am I doing this?" To which Rousey answers, "That's why," once the cutscene concludes, after it reveals important information to Chris and the player. I don't have an explanation for how Rousey knows these moments are important, but I don't think he has ulterior motives. After either cutscene, Rousey will walk in from off-screen, and not give an answer to where he went. Personally, I think he just went to the bathroom. Once we have the sheet music, we can look at it and find there's no way we are memorizing all that to tell Chris what to play. We give it our best shot, but are quickly stopped by Chris, playing the wrong note anyway. Rousey offers that he could try, but Susie tells them,
Chris, today in church when you were asleep, your mom said you used to play good. I don't know why you're pretending you can't now. Maybe you're, like, embarrassed or something? But, like, you know. Chris, you should play.
You thought about Susie's words and took a deep breath. Your hands began to move on their own. Chris will play the song for Susie and Rousey, despite us being inside them. Sure, they had to for the plot, and maybe they justified this as spying us for not being able to play it. But I do think Susie's words had an impact on them. They realized they cared more about playing for Susie than not playing for us. After this moment, you are allowed to play any song you like on the piano, and Chris will follow your command. There are a lot of Easter eggs if you play songs from Deltarune or Undertale, but none of them are that important plot-wise. However, playing Megalovania will make a doggy drive by and kill you, so maybe don't do that one. Playing the piano causes the final door in the study to open up. When you are finally ready to leave, Gerson will stop you one last time and call Susie over. He asks her to deliver the letter, and when Susie tells her the letter will disappear in a moment, he asks if she can memorize it and rewrite it. She agrees, and Gerson sends her on her way. Through the door, we are met with a prophecy panel, which reads, "The night which makes with blackened knife," and in order to proceed, we must smash it. The panel reappears a few steps later, with the added line, "Shall duel with heroes, strife by strife." Once we reach the beginning area, where we were before we encountered the knight, we will find them waiting for us. They attack us as we go through a climbing section, but survive and make it to a staircase. Susie chases them, but the knight ducks into a door and escapes. Susie is mad, but Rousey calms her down and tells us that we can steal a dark fountain to buy more time. Susie agrees, and we head off to steal the fountain.
The Dark Fountain. Why aren't they stopping us from stealing it? Well, guess I'm not complaining. Chris, do your thing. Guess the sun went down, huh? Damn, Chris, look under the door. That weird smoke. No way. You don't think there's another Dark World? Damn it. That means night is still... It's locked. Ugh. It's a stupid numbers lock again. Too hard to break either. Guess we can try looking for the combination. Come on.